I just dance every time the music comes on. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning, Austin. I'm fantastic. How you doing?
Man, I'm excited to be here. I love doing these. I love giving the folks the information about what's going on in the market, what's going on in the economy. And it's like slam packed. We got so much data to share. It's wild this morning.
No, we do. And a couple of things to note. First off, I really want to change the music.
You
I
do?
do. I
Well,
do.
I disagree because I like the music. I'm over here dancing.
Well, if anybody has like any sort of that I guess suggestion on what kind of music, like I'm a big fan of 21 Pilots, so I would definitely go with that first over anything else. But we probably can't do that.
Can we
But any
afford
music
that?
suggestions going into 2023? This is the last broadcast of 2022. Let us know because like that first music, I mean, like for the people that are just joining in, if you go all the way back to the beginning, it's not great. I don't know. It's not great. Yeah. Anyway. Austin, I think today we're talking about the market and everything that's going on. You've got some good data pulled up, right?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Let's start there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so what we were trying to figure out is the story because look, you're just seeing a lot of anytime you pop open the news, like if you pop open Yahoo News or CNN or Fox News I don't care what your news Business Insider, I don't care what your news source is, like everybody is perpetuating a narrative of like, okay, what's going on in the market? Are we going to see home prices crash? Are we shifting from a massive seller market to like a historic crash? You hear the words recession and depression floating around. It's like, okay, well, what's the story, right? And so what's the story? And so we started kind of playing around some different data points, and I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting. Let me pull up this first one. And what this one is the amount of active listings. And so here I'll show this. Now, by the way, what I can do on this data is I can pull all of for all intents and purposes, all of the multi-list service, which is like, I mean, it's a pretty big scope of things. And so
yeah, and I do want to know, like we've got some friends that are watching nationally on here, I can see, and this is specifically for Metro Detroit.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what this data is. And some of the other metros are looking quite different right now. Like if we look at like the Boise market, for example, the number of listings there, as reported by some of our friends and referral partners, has over tripled just in the last 90 days.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some massive changes happening in some of those other markets. And we'll talk about why that is and why the Metro Detroit market is just a little more protected than most markets. But let's go ahead and get that data on the screen there.
Do you have it or no?
I see it. Okay, there we go.
There it is. Okay, cool. So what I did is I pulled data for like the big three: Macomb County, Oakland County, Wayne County here locally. So I left out Washtenaw County. It doesn't matter. We could grab it if we wanted to, but this is the historic count of active listings. And so what this tells is this is a story when we were talking coming out of the pandemic, right? So in here in 2020, the narrative was like, there's no inventory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we've seen since really April of 21, a steady climb in inventory, right? Now, by the way, that had to happen. There was a historic low in inventory, and it created this feeding frenzy along with interest rates being so low, and we just saw prices shoot up.
Is there a way to zoom in on that a little bit more? There we go. Love that. Yeah. All right. So one thing that I do want to note is going back to the beginning of the graph, we're seeing, housing rates around that 40,000 mark, right? As far as active listings go.
Yes.
And for Metro Detroit, that's really low. I don't want to freak people out with this graph and say, oh my gosh, we went from 40 to close to 140. When, to your point, 40 was very low. And the result of that was we saw home values increase 20% year over year for 2.5, almost 3 years.
Yeah.
Right.
When you say very low, we're talking like on death's door, like anemic, very low. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's like playing musical chairs. We had, 20 people playing musical chairs, but we only had 3 seats that came up at a time.
Yeah.
Hence those prices just kept on skyrocketing month after month. I mean, there were months where we had 3 or 4% appreciation in 1 month. 1 month. That's crazy and not sustainable. Yeah. Going back. Go ahead.
No, and so sellers got home sellers got the memo. They were like, okay, let's sell the house.
Yeah.
Right. And we just saw it shoot up. Like tons of people went on the market.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, so after 2008, after the last crash, Americans are spending a lot more time in their properties, right? So before 2007, the average amount of time an American owned a home was about 7 years, 7.8 years, right? Coming out 2012, 13, 14, that skyrocketed up to 11 years. And then after 2015, that peaked out at 13.2 years. So most people, when they buy a home, they're thinking, okay, I'm gonna spend 5 years here, maybe 7 years here, right? And just like everybody else, even though that's what their plan is, the actual was 13 years, right? And then all of a sudden, news hit the street that property values had skyrocketed up, interest rates had ratcheted down. And so there were a lot of people out there that may have done a kitchen renovation or a bathroom renovation or any of that kind of a thing, but decided instead, wait a minute, I'm at a 4.5% interest rate on my current home that's valued now at 350,000. I can get a 2.75% interest rate or a 3% interest rate on that house that's 450,000. So I can actually move into that next bigger home or the next more updated home or the newer built home and keep my payment either the same or less.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of that 2021 inventory and early 2022 inventory came from. People woke up and realized, holy heck, I can actually make this move into the next home instead of spending $50,000 or $75,000 redoing my kitchen or bathrooms on this home or basement or whatever that looks like. In addition to that, I think a lot of people got sticker shock when they did have the contractors out in 2020 or 2021 because of the supply chain issues and because of the labor issues. I mean, and I'll say it myself. I've had some work done with my house. You know, I very recently I started trying to get quotes for a new roof.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. I've called 6 companies so far. Only one has come out. Literally, only one has come. Like 3 companies just plainly said, we're not even quoting until June of next year. We're not even going to open the books and start quoting. We are packed full.
Yeah.
One company promised they would come out and didn't. One company said they call back with a time and didn't. One company came out and I still haven't gotten the quote.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people saw that in 2021 and said, you know what, we're just going to go buy that next house. We're going to take the opportunity to get into a property that would otherwise take us another 5 to 7 years. And the other interesting part of this is the average time that people were in homes were 13.2 years. But if you separate it by generation, right, baby boomers are at almost 20 years. It was the millennials, the second time buyers, that ratcheted down to around 6.5 years. So people essentially that had bought their first time home, let's say in a Ferndale or a Royal Oak or a Livonia or maybe like a Shelby Township or even a North Warren, all of a sudden 5-6 years later, their home went from, call it 125,000 to 230,000 in value. And they decided to pull that equity and make that move preemptively into maybe, and we did this with a lot of families ourselves, into a Novi or a Northville or a Plymouth or a Troy or a Rochester, an area that previously people wanted to make that move and shift into, a lot of times for school district purposes, but they had to wait an extra 5 years to do. All of a sudden that got erased between low interest rates and between values rocketing up. They can now make that move 5 years early.
Yep. Okay, so then we saw totally agree. So then we saw the Fed start to raise interest rates kind of right in here, right? Like right kind of, and these are quarterly graphs, but like kind of right April, March, and they just started ratcheting up interest rates, and then July, and so what's really interesting is like we saw a bunch of sellers flood the market. And when I say flood the market, like we're still not normalized, right? This is still not enough inventory.
No.
But anyway, what's interesting to me, though, is right about June, right? This is June 2022, 129, July 2022, 130, August 22, 131, September 132. Well, like it's basically leveled off.
It has. And check this out. We've got actually a home builder and a contractor in here. And yeah, we can pull that data for the 06 to 12. And if I don't get to it on this Zoom, I'll make sure to post pictures of that in the comments itself. Definitely, Cody, for sure.
Yeah,
and then this is cool. As a house builder who interviewed with you for real estate, I can verify in Washtenaw County, sticker shock is still there, and licensed reputable contractors have seen our prices increase by And then the rest of that comment, about 40% charge to customers, and for Washtenaw County, we're still booking out months. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that that's happening. And if you look at like an area like in Ann Arbor, a Dexter, like those types of areas, home values themselves have skyrocketed, but also wages have gone up, particularly in Washtenaw County. And a lot of that has to do with the university, as well as Google and some of the other employers that are in and around Ann Arbor itself. Wages have jumped, right? So you've got, especially in Washtenaw County, but I'll even use just my parents for an example. So we've got my parents who recently just redid their bathroom, which is great, came out wonderful. And they did it because of a need, right? They needed to redo that bathroom because they needed to bring the lip on the shower down for my mother and all of those things, right? The quote I thought was a little on the outrageous side. And at the end of the day, my parents were willing to pay it because they both had to pay it and they had the money with which to pay it. If I had gotten that quote for the bathroom, I probably would have skipped on it. So there are a lot of people in the market right now that are willing to pay that because they either don't have a choice or they've got the money and they may as well use it. Yeah. So fun fact, I was reading the Morning Brew the other day, and I thought this was really interesting. So they did a survey of millennials and boomers, and I love this. Millennials and boomers. And the question was, what is your expectation? What is your expectation of what happens when the person passes away and then the wealth transfer happens, right? Essentially, what are you going to inherit? Mm-hmm. And millennials on average, they felt they were going to, they really think this, they're going to get around $450,000 to $500,000 on average. Boomer said, well, we're planning on leaving $200,000 to $250,000. And there's a big mismatch of expectations. And it's interesting because economically, nothing ever happens in a vacuum. Numbers don't happen alone. Nothing is ever siloed. All the numbers kind of impinge on each other, right? So now what I'm hearing is you've got millennials and digging into the data that both need an economic boost, especially right now where inflation is. And so they're hoping for that Hail Mary pass when the time comes, and God forbid people pass away, but it happens. And they're hoping for that Hail Mary pass. And then you've got the baby boomers that are living longer. They're using more of their resources. And frankly, they're using it faster than the previous generation did. Like if you look at the greatest generation, right? And that's what they call themselves. I love that, by the way, which is like my grandmother and my grandparents. Their entire goal was how much can we leave our kids? How much can we make our kids better? Let's spend less, right? Mm-hmm. Let's buy Kroger brand. We're not buying, Pepsi. We're buying, I even remember what the RC Cola.
RC Cola, yeah.
There it is. We're buying RC Cola. And then you've got my parents that are like, you know what? We're going to Europe. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're out of here. And I'm not saying that they're being frivolous with their money. That's not what I mean. I'm saying that costs have gone up. People are living longer than they anticipated, and they are less concerned necessarily with saving the money for that next generation as the previous generation did. And I've had this conversation with my parents a ton of times, right? Like they would love to leave us kids something.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, they're saying that on one side, and then they're burning the money as fast as they can on the other side, which is great. And I want them to do that. I want them to enjoy it. Just putting that out there. I've got another study I want to reference in a minute as well.
Yep. So this is 10-year data, by the way. And so we've just been operating in a really low inventory environment for a long time, and we're just popping up and normalizing. We just are.
Yeah, we really are. We really are. And again, Cody, I love what you're saying because I believe you're exactly right on this one.
Yeah. So the next graph that I have, by the way, here, this is just interesting data. Let me share this one, Mike. So the next one I have is just here. Let me pull it up.
Yeah. So while you're grabbing that, I'll say, Cody, to your point, there are a lot of people in the market that are contractors right now that should probably not be in the market. And I've experienced that myself as a person that owns rental property and things like that. I've experienced that myself with some of my homeowners and also home buyers after closing, chasing the less expensive labor versus the more expensive labor. My advice to a lot of people have been twofold. First off, you are not going to recoup the price of that new kitchen on the sales price. You're just not. So what I'm advising owners to do is people are calling, past clients are calling and saying, hey, if I do my kitchen or if I do my bathroom or if I finish my basement or if I do A, B, or C to the property, will it raise my sales price? And the answer is yes, of course it will. But then my question back is, are you planning to live in your property a minimum 5 years or more? And if they say yes, I'm like, great, how long? Well, I'm planning to live there for 10 years. Okay, cool. So 10 years from now, that kitchen you put in will be dated, or at least very, very much on the border of being dated. It's not going to have the latest styles. It's not going to have the latest quartz. It's not going to have the latest cabinetry. It's not going to have the latest hardware. It's not going to have the latest light fixtures, all of those things. So you got to know there's a depreciating value from the day that kitchen is done. That decay effect starts immediately. Number two is the reality is home values are like a rubber band. You can stretch them, but you can't break them versus the market around it. And here's what I mean. The market is based on the home sales that happened previously, compounded against supply and demand. So if you've got a neighborhood that's bracketed, let's say between 350 and 450,000, and you've got home sales everywhere in there, adding a $150,000 kitchen, and let's say you have the best home to start with, adding a $150,000 kitchen does not mean your house is 600,000. It doesn't actually work that way, right? You don't get a dollar for dollar return. Most people on a kitchen or a master bathroom get somewhere in about a third of a dollar return. So if you've got a house that's a good house, it's a good egg, right? In that 350 to 450 example, if you're priced at 400 now, that's where the value is because your kitchen's 30 years old, but it's very well maintained and your home is very well maintained. And you've done the carpet, you've done the paint, you've done some other things to it, right? You've switched out the old brown doors for the 6 panels, whatever you've done. If you add that $100,000 kitchen or $75,000 kitchen, you're only going to get 30 to 60,000 because you're bumping up against the top of the market at that 450. And that's the reality of it. So you got to be real careful. So then the other question I ask people is, okay, if you're planning on spending, let's say 5 years in this property, that's what you're telling me. Okay. So if you're going to spend 75,000 on this kitchen and you're going to get, let's say 40 back on a sales price, which is high, then the balance is 35,000. So let me ask you the question, is the new kitchen worth it to you to pay $7,000 a year for? Because that's the actual cost of the kitchen. The actual cost of the kitchen is $600 per month, right? So look at it in terms of going and leasing or buying a car, right? If you look at that car, let's say you've got a paid off vehicle and it runs just fine and you've got 70,000 miles on it and you're doing great and you can run it up another 50,000 before there are any real issues, right? Before you got to change out an alternator or do any of those things. Is it worth it to take on a $600 a month car payment, right? Because the insurance will go up as well. Is it worth it to take on that payment versus having that zero payment and that car runs just fine? And that's the question that I think people really start needing to ask themselves, especially right now in this inflationary market. And that's the question I think people are not asking themselves, especially because they're borrowing to get those upgrades done. So it's almost like like robbing Peter to pay Paul, where people don't necessarily see the money. And I know I'm running on forever here, but I'm gonna.
By the way, I also don't think that there's a right or wrong answer here.
Yeah.
Like for instance, we're considering doing a renovation at my house, and it's like, well, for us, it's a lifestyle play, and we plan on being here for 15 years. We're not going anywhere. We got an amazing place. My parents just did their kitchen renovation, but previous to that, my parents are the kind of people that would drive they'll buy I don't know what my mom drives, a Toyota RAV4, and she'll drive it for 15 years. It's just, that's the kind of folks that they are. And it's like, so I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. It's just a lifestyle play.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, my dad, he is a contractor. He's a master electrician. He still actually works, still does, still moonlights out there, does a good job with it. His van is 18 years old and has 300,000 miles on it. But for him, it runs just fine.
Yes, yeah.
And the book that my dad is modeled off of, like they wrote this book about him and he wasn't even born yet, is called The Millionaire Next Door. I'm gonna throw that in the chat. So here's where I think people need to start also being a little bit more careful. What I'm seeing right now, like as an example, nothing lives in a silo. Inflation is causing people to borrow at a much higher level than in the previous 5 or even 10 years. Right. And here's what this looks like now. So back in 2004, 5, 6, and 7, people would use their houses like a bank account. They would refi, pull out 20 grand, pay off credit card debt, but not change the spending behavior. So the credit card debt would rack back up over the next 2 years, refi again, pull out another 20 grand, pay off the credit card debt, I'm not kidding. Like, this was the cycle that just happened from the late 90s right up until the down market. And part of that caused us to have the lowest amount of home equity in 2007 that we had pretty much ever had in American history for anybody that owned a home for less than 10 years. For people that owned a home for 20 years or more, they actually had high equity. A lot of these guys have paid off mortgages. Like, let's say my grandmother, for example, she had paid off her mortgage. She lived in the same house for 40 years, paid off her mortgage early, 20 years in, and just never went and got another loan. Now, that said, she also never owned a phone. She never owned a computer. She never drove a car. She actually never had to have a driver's license, none of those things. So there was nothing for her to really spend the money on. So she just didn't spend the money at all. Every couple of years, she might get like a new TV or a new hairdryer or a new, something that's relatively inexpensive as compared to some of the things that we're spending money on, like a kitchen, right? So right now, what we're seeing is home equity lines of credit. Home equity lines of credit are at a Did I lose you?
I'm back. You froze. I don't know what happened. Maybe I froze. I don't know.
I don't know why I froze there. I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah. Anyway, so what we're seeing now is instead of people going and refinancing and taking the money out because they have a 2.5 or a 2.75 or a 3% or a 3.25 interest rate, what they're doing instead is they're going and getting a HELOC at 6 or 6.5 or 7%, and then they're pulling the money, quote unquote, on demand. And some people are getting sold this, and this is true. This is true, right? Like, I have a HELOC on one of my properties that I use just for emergency funds. It's there forever. Like, I haven't used it, but it's there should I need it. Like, if something catastrophic happens and I need to go, pull 50 grand out to go do some massive repairs on a property to, offset some sort of calamity or catastrophe, sure, it's there. And the how it's being sold and marketed is you don't have to pay interest on the money until you take it. So why not have it?
Why not have it as a backup?
Why not? And I contest that that's not necessarily the right answer, because every step that makes it easier to borrow money makes it easier to borrow money.
Yeah.
Right? Why not raise the limit on your credit card?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, the interest rate is 19% or 14% or 18% or whatever it is. But I mean, if you put 10 grand on it, it's only $200 a month.
Yeah.
Well, until the interest rate goes up from 12 to 19, as is recently done on most credit cards. But and even then, if you put 20 grand on the credit card, it's only $400 a month. That's only your car payment. And you know what? We'll just go get it out of the house and pay it back. Instead of paying $400 a month to the credit card company, we'll pay $170 a month on our HELOC.
Yeah.
Oh, and because it's only $170 a month, we might as well just go ahead and take 2.5 times that balance out. So instead of 20 grand, we're taking 70, we're taking 50, we're taking 60. And that perpetual cycle of getting ourselves further and further and further into debt is happening right now as Americans. And as Americans, I firmly believe the answer is not go get a HELOC. The answer is tighten the belt. The other thing that I'm seeing right now is, so from 2011 to 2020, for that 9-year period, the average American, right, saved 7.8% on average per year of their income. Right? They put it into 401ks, they put it into Roth IRAs, they bought some stocks, they bought some bonds, they bought some mutuals, they bought stamps. I don't know. What people like hard goods have become a thing again, right? People buy art, people buy cars, and they appreciate in value because, old Mustangs always appreciate in value. Like, they buy those things, right? In the last 12 months, that has ratcheted down to 2.3%.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that's craziness. 2.3% of our money is going into a savings or retirement vehicle.
All right. Can I summarize what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're in this web. Yeah. So what you're saying is, one, like, you're looking at, should I stay or should I go? Am I going to get the value of the renovation? The answer is you're probably not going to get dollar for dollar of whatever that renovation is. There's very few renovations that you're going to get that. So you have to make a decision right now. Is this a lifestyle play? Do I want to stay in my home for another 10 years? Or do I just hey, this is a great home. Let me sell it and let me go buy something else. So that's the first decision you have to make. Number two is, if that becomes cost prohibitive, you got to figure out, okay, should I go and borrow more money to make this happen? or should I look at my current liquidity situation and make some decisions around that? And I think what you're a proponent of is like, don't go into debt right now with raising interest rates to go and finance something when you could just sell the house and move and get something that you want.
And
right?
that's exactly right, because right now before, the last time interest rates were this high, well, not this high, right? I mean, they were this high 15 years ago. Like
Sure.
like my first interest rate was up in the 9.25.
Back in my day, I walked uphill in snow. All right. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm not that guy. I'm so not that old. I don't feel that old. I feel young at heart. We'll put it that way. Am I young, guys? I'm young, right? Somebody put it in the chat.
You're
Tell,
young,
tell,
man.
tell me I look great for my age. Something. But anyway, so back in the early 80s, where my mother, and father, and they had gotten their loans and stuff, interest rates were up 12, 15, 18%, whatever that looked like. People were buying down the interest rates because they couldn't afford them. I mean, think about like do you have a mortgage calculator by chance?
I do. Yeah, I could pull one up. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's pull up a loan for 250,000, and let's put in the interest rates of 3, 6.5, and 15. And 15 was actually low. It peaked out at 18. But these payment differences are massive. Massive. Even from 3 to 6.5, they're pretty big. But from 3 to 18, I mean, think about this, guys. Think about our generation. Like I'm a millennial. Austin's a Gen Xer. I mean, think about our generation and what it looks like buying homes with these high interest rates that our parents had to deal with 20 years ago. So they would buy down those interest rates, right? With the interest rate moving up so rapidly, banks have come out with 2-1 and 3-2-1 loans, which has been very effective. Thank you, Cody. I appreciate you. Look at that, putting that right on the screen.
Oh, wait, getting out of high school.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay. You had me until you said you were in high school. And okay.
By the way, this might be the most important innovation that we've seen in a mortgage in a long time.
Yes.
Here's what the mortgage companies are doing, because right now you're seeing interest rates, call it 7%. And Mike, we talked to the team about this yesterday. You think by the end of the summer, we're going to see a number that begins with 8.
Yeah. I think and based on the jobs report yesterday, I think that's going to be by the end of the first quarter.
There you go. Okay. So here's what the banks did, is what they're allowing clients to do when they're buying a home is they're allowing the seller to pay for a lower interest rate for you as the buyer. Mm-hmm. And so what they'll do, there's like a program where you could do a 3-2-1. There's a program where you could do a 2-1. But what that means is, sorry to really simplify this, but this is like such an incredible innovation that the mortgage business has done. It's mind blowing to me. You're still getting a 30-year fixed interest rate. And what they're doing is they're allowing the seller to say, okay, instead of you having a 7%, for the first year of your loan, I'll pay for you to have a 4, which will then go to a 5, right? Which will then go to a 6, which will then go to a 7. Yep. And this is so incredibly important, because the reality is you've already heard people, like really top economists, talk like, we think we just got to weather the next 2 years interest rate wise. Like the Fed has even come out and basically said, like, hey, I think over the next 24 months, after about 24 months, we're going to see where they're going to have to lower things by about 200 basis points.
They're going to have to.
And so there's an incredible opportunity for you right now on if you're buying a home, and I think also selling a home.
So let's dig into that a little bit. So back in our parents' time, when they were buying and they had that 18% interest rate, and they had to lower the rate, and the goal was to lower the rate by, let's say, 4 points to make it more affordable. Yeah. Effectively, that's paying 4% of the home value up front, or the interest up front, right? Which is a lot. That's a lot of cash outlay. Doing it this way with a 3-2-1, sure, we're buying down 3 points the first year, but it's only that 1 year. It's a great tool. It's a great tool for buyers to get into a home. And if they're at a 6.5 today, get back down to a 3.5 and then a 4.5. That's probably where you're going to be. And then by then, the interest rates will have come back down to about 4.5, and then refi, right? And it's also a great tool for sellers to use to make their property less expensive to own than other properties, which means buyers will pay more. So what this comes down to, buying a home and buying a car, it's just like anything else, right? Like if somebody were to say, hey, Mike, I will lease you this Ferrari for $82 a month. I'm
Yes,
gonna have,
please.
yep, I'm gonna have a Ferrari in 4 different colors. It's gonna be so great. It's gonna be so great. I'm gonna have 4
I'm gonna
Ferraris.
get a big old chain like a rapper. It's gonna be like it's going
Exactly.
down.
Yeah. And effectively, that's what happened with the housing market for the last 2 years. They said, "Hey, I'm gonna sell you this $500,000 property, but I'm only gonna charge you $300,000 for it on a monthly payment because
Yeah.
we dropped the rates 2.5 points."
Yeah.
And that's what happened, right? Now, it wasn't as big as it could have been. It wasn't like they took $1 million property and that payment and brought it down to what a 300 was. But taking a $500,000 house and repricing it monthly payment wise to a 300, that's pretty significant. That's pretty significant, especially because the average Michigander, the average person in Michigan, can afford a $300,000 property, putting 10 to 20% down. That's right in line with our average household income, right? To spend about 30% on a mortgage. Let's take a look at this calculator. I
Yeah,
want to add this thing in. There we go.
What
Okay.
do you want to put for loan amount?
Can you zoom? Put in 250,000.
250.
Yeah, because that gets us about a $300,000 home price.
Yeah. What do you want me to put for rate?
Put in 3.5.
3.5. What do you want me to compare? Oh, I did 2.5. 3.5. Okay.
Yeah, and then put the next one at same thing, but like 6.5.
6.5. Okay.
And then can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. Let me punch in the stuff and then I'll. Okay.
There we go. So check this out, guys. So payments have risen $370 a month, which does not feel like it's disastrous, but the reality is, guys,
This
that's
is
$4 grand a year.
460. 460.
I'm sorry, 460. But the
Yeah.
reality is, guys, that's over $5 grand a year. That's pushing $6 grand a year. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
That's the difference for a lot of people between buying a home and not buying a home.
Totally agree.
And if you do not own a home at all and you're renting, I would highly advise buying a home, because if your lease rate has not gone up yet, it will be the next time. Rents have gone
Well,
up
that's right.
30% year over
This same property, if this were a rental that we were talking about, instead of being 1,580 plus taxes and insurance, so call it 1,800,
year.
you're probably paying 2,200.
And then that's where we're at, because I
Go
bought a
ahead
house
and try to
here.
find something to rent. Try to find a home to rent, you guys, under $2,000 a month. It's virtually impossible.
Yeah.
If it's in a like a
Okay.
normal, desirable area.
Yeah.
Right?
As an example, I mean, this is actually a good example for Ferndale. Like in Ferndale itself right now, you can buy a nice home for 225 to 250 range, maybe 275, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what part of Ferndale you want to be in, north of 9, south of 9, north of Marshall, south of Marshall, whatever that looks like, right?
Yep.
But the reality is, like I've looked at rents in Ferndale because as an investor, I'm looking at properties all the time. And Ferndale is one of my key areas I like to look at. 24 months ago, I was looking at homes in the 1,250 to 1,550 range as far as rent goes. Today, I'm looking at 1,650 to 2,100.
Yeah.
For the same houses. Right? Now, check this out. Let's put the interest rate, and this is the same price property. We haven't even adjusted for pricing or inflation or any of that kind of stuff yet. So let's put that 6.5. Let's change that to a 16.
16.
Yeah. So this is what our parents had to deal with.
Yeah.
For that same house, right?
$1.2 million in total payments. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah.
I mean, think about this, right? Like my parents, actually, let's change the loan amount to 200,000 even.
On both or just the one?
Yeah, on both.
Okay.
And then let's change the other one to 6.5.
Okay.
All right. So my parents built a house in 1984, right? Their starting interest rate was 12%, right? Today, and they built that house and it was $240,000. They put $40,000 down. The loan amount was 200. Give or take a little bit.
Yep.
I think it was like 202 was the loan amount or something like that. Anyway, today, that payment is $1,264 on a $200,000 house.
Yeah.
In 1984, it was $2,689. So think about this. Back then, I mean, think about adjusting for 35 years of inflation. Your payment is still $1,400, $1,500 a month higher. Like there is, I completely understand. My dad worked at General Motors. He worked at Standard Power's operation. He worked at Pulltown. He worked at pretty much every factory in the area, right? He took every scrap of overtime possible. For a long time, my mother worked 2 jobs, both part-time, but still worked 2 jobs, and did the best that she could, keeping those hours up while trying to raise us kids. And this was the reason, guys, because at a 12% interest rate, those payments are buying a home is crushing.
Yeah.
Crushing.
I think what you're trying to say is we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be okay.
I think we're going to be okay. Actually,
we're
take
gonna see-
take loan number 1.
Yeah.
Here, go back up and
Yeah.
move that number from 200 to 340.
Okay. We can
Now,
go
here's
even
what I'm
more.
illustrating here.
Yeah, we can go even more. Yeah.
Yep. A house with almost the same floor plan that I grew up with, that my parents bought for 240 back in 1984. A house that right there sold for 395, 20% down being 340,000, sold and closed for 395 about 90 days ago. Same floor plan, same 2,400 square foot house in Hunt Club in Farmington Hills, all of those things. So even adjusting for the inflation of the house price, it's still 500 less a month to make that payment than it was for my parents 35 years ago, or your parents, or anybody's parents for that matter.
Yeah.
And guess what? Our wages have over doubled in 35 years.
Sure.
Have they gone up as fast as they could? No. Do we always want them to be? Do we always want to make more money? Absolutely. But Austin, to your point, we're going to be okay. We're going to weather the storm.
Yeah,
right?
I think the larger story is, look,
Mhm.
we're going to have to get through the next 2 years.
Yep.
And I think what's going to happen is you're going to see interest rates bump up. The banks have come out with some really cool programs on 30-year fixed. So we're not exposing people like all these crazy products that happened in 2009 that crashed the economy. They're just doing 30-year fixed products where they're allowing the seller to purchase a lower interest rate for you. And then all you're going to do is you're going to weather the storm for 2 years and then refinance that same balance when interest rates normalize. And I just think our long-term normalization is going to be a 5 or 6% rate. It's what every major economist keeps saying over and over and over.
And that's okay. And that's the truth. And one thing I will say about this, and Cody, I think you're right on this. The Fed has dropped several bombs on the market through these interest rate hikes and these raises, and hinting that there's another 0.5 point coming, and there is all of these things. Those are the bombs that are being dropped.
Yeah.
Where we're lucky here in Metro Detroit is threefold. First one is we don't have companies like Open Door or OfferPad that have come in. They're called iBuyers, and they give cash offers for properties. They used to give, and when Zillow was in the game, and they were in the game for almost 2 years, and then got the heck out of it because they lost $880 million in 2 years. Where we've been more protected is we haven't had the iBuyers up until 6 months ago.
Yeah,
and even then, Open Door was starting their pullback from buying and their pullback from paying higher dollar amounts. So we haven't seen that impact Metro Detroit. I brought up Boise, Idaho earlier. That's where Boise went wrong. That's where there's a real struggle there. So Boise market in 2019, your average home value was around $235,000. Going into 2022, it was just over $500,000. That is a massive difference. Massive difference. And that's a first-time buyer home. Right? And a lot of it was driven because Open Door itself was buying 2,000 to 2,500 homes per month in that market. Like Boise's big, but it ain't that big. When you buy 2,000 homes a month and suck those out of the market, and you've got all the regular families that need to buy a home as well, that's a problem. We've been very lucky. We are lucky versus, let's call it Silicon Valley or San Francisco or LA or some of those other areas. Like we've all seen Meta lay off 11,000 people. We've seen Google lay off 10,000 people. We've seen Twitter lay off, I don't know how many people, 2/3 of their people, right? We've seen all of these things happen. Yet it's not impacting us here in Metro Detroit. If you look at our industries in Metro Detroit, healthcare is one of the biggest industries in Metro Detroit right now. It is. It's one of our biggest employers. If you look at the jobs report last month, healthcare added 43,000 jobs.
That's wild.
It added the number of jobs that big tech laid off.
Yeah.
And seeing as we've got Blue Cross and we've got some of the other providers, not only here, but in Grand Rapids, like Priority Health is in Grand Rapids, but they have offices here as well. We are way more protected. Our healthcare system here in Metro Detroit is massive. Henry Ford is massive. Beaumont is massive, right? These places are massive. So we are much more protected as far as that goes. And then third, we don't have the investors coming in like Blackstone or BlackRock, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like BlackRock coming into Metro Detroit. To Cody, to your point, we've got the smaller, more individual investors, right? Like Trademark Homes, as big as they are, they're still small, like shrimp size compared to BlackRock.
Sure.
But I got a call the other day from an agent that was just employed by Trademark. And what she told me was Trademark itself is looking to increase its inventory by 1,500 homes over the next 12 months, 1,500 homes or condos that they can rent out.
We actually are a much tougher market for a really, really large firm to enter into. And I'll tell you why. If you go out west, like I have a friend that lives in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
When you go out west, some of these neighborhoods are like, I mean, they're 2,000 homes.
Yeah.
They'll come in and they'll take like the same 5 models and repeat it over 2,000 homes.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes really easy to know what a home is worth.
And that's why Open Door started in Phoenix.
Just like boom.
Because every year you have 55 or 60 of the same model sell, and they all sell within this little variance of a range. Versus like, and again, I'll go back to the neighborhood that I grew up in, which is actually just about spot on for the average neighborhood of Metro Detroit. Yeah. There are 242 homes.
Yeah.
And only 25 of them have my parents' floor plan. Right. It's like 28. And there were 3 builders in there.
Yeah.
So it's not like there were 5 floor plans. There were 20.
When you look at the way that Metro Detroit grew, it started with the city and started to go out to the suburbs. But what happened is like little pocket neighborhoods popped up everywhere, and they're all very different. And so it's very difficult for a really, really large tech investor to come in with algorithms and start to figure out how to get homes. Now, by the way, make no mistake, these companies are interested in stealing homes, right? Like we have this conversation all the time, like with people that are looking for cash offers. It's like, if you're a cash offer investor, are you looking to pay at market, above market? Are you looking to pay below market? And by and large, they're looking to pay below market. That's the value.
That's why they say cash is king.
We're really insulated here. And so here's the other thing that you're seeing nationwide. Previously, like you tell your Boise example, like a giant investor would go into Boise and they'd go, okay, that house is worth 250. I'll pay 275 because I see it going up.
Yeah.
Well, a bunch of these guys got burned. Zillow pulled out of that business. How much money did Zillow lose on this program?
In dollars, it was $880 million lost. In stock value, it was 70%.
They lost billions of dollars with this program.
Yeah. And like so stock is literally down 70%.
So
from peak to now.
All of the large investors that are left doing this, guess what? Like they've got their tail tucked between their legs a little bit. And so it's just not a threat here as much as you would think.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see there's always going to be an environment for the individual or like smaller investor because they can go in and analyze property by property, right? They have that infrastructure locally.
And they have the infrastructure locally. And with individual investors, like Open Door's target was $1,000.
Yeah.
They wanted to profit $1,000. So they would buy a property, they would do carpet, paint, put it back on the market, and their entire goal was to net out $1,000 between the purchase and holding cost. I mean, that is a razor thin. Now, on the one side, you look at that and you're like, well, hey, if they're doing 25,000 homes a month, $1,000 isn't a bad gig. But any one little thing goes wrong, the interest rate goes up a quarter point, a half point.
Yeah.
And that 1,000 is in the red. Like completely in the red, versus a local investor who is like, hey, I need to make 10% or 15% or 20% or whatever that number is, but it sure as heck isn't going to be $1,000 because if I find that I've got a $5,000 mold problem I didn't account for in my numbers, I'm negative, I'm dead. And that's my money for my family.
Mike, have you ever bought a home that you needed to put renovation money? Ever bought a home that you either were looking to flip or buy and like put some money into it and get up and running and then rent it? Or even for your own, have you ever bought a home that the cost of the renovations wasn't at least 10% higher?
No.
Ever?
Ever. No.
Ever?
At least 10%. I build 20% in
I
just because I know it's going to.
build 20% in, and it
Yeah.
still comes in higher. It's
Yeah. Hoping to be pleasantly surprised, and usually
here's what was happening. They were coming in and trying to do $1,000 razor thin, and then one house would lose $10,000 and they'd wipe out the profits of 10.
Yep.
And if you do that over a large enough scale, these guys got hammered.
That's the truth. But I'll say this, and again, my advice remains the exact same as it did last year, the year before, and the year before that. So I had a friend that was looking at buying in 2019. They decided the home values were probably a little bit too high. The market was getting a little too choppy. So they decided to release for a year.
Yeah.
Going into the end of 2020, my advice for this gentleman was, hey, man, you got to get out of your lease and buy a damn house.
Stop.
That's the truth.
It's the truth.
And they decided, because home values had gone up 15% roughly at that point, the home that they were looking at was 275. Originally, the neighborhood is now selling at 315. They decided not to. So they released a year. So now those home values in the same neighborhood are up at 370. Now they're going to come down to probably 350, maybe 340, because we're going to see a little bit of a market pullback, a little bit of a normalization. That's going to happen. That's just where we're at right now. But we're not going to see those home values go down to 275. Those days are gone, and they are not coming back.
By the way, 370 to 340 is 10%.
Yeah.
Your stock accounts lose 10% all the time. All the time. It just feels different when it's your house. The reality is that we're okay. And real estate is not a time the market business. By the way, neither is owning stocks. It's a time in the market business. You got to live somewhere anyway. You got to pay a mortgage payment anyway. And so you're either going to pay your landlord's mortgage payment or you're going to have your own. And the added tax write-offs of interest write-offs and the added tax write-offs of property taxes and interest and all that stuff. And it's like you gotta live somewhere anyway.
Yeah.
And over the course of time, you're going to make money. There's never been a 5-year period in American history where you would have lost money owning a home, ever.
Yeah. So here's where I think it's really interesting, right? Yeah. So, and Cody, I see your comment. I'm not going to put it up, but I'm going to talk about it because I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback, right? So number one, if you don't own a home, you need to own a home, period. That's just all there is to it. To your point, Austin, wealth is created through home ownership. It is a vehicle for wealth creation, and you got to live somewhere. So every single month when you are renting something, you get zero at the end of that month, right? It's like phone service. It's like paying for AT&T, right? You get nothing, literally nothing. Actually, what you get the next month is another bill. That's what you get. With a home, even if the home does not appreciate, let's pretend the home goes up in zero value over the next 5 years, which is not going to happen. But let's just say you buy a house for $350 and it goes up for zero value. On average, over that 5-year period, you're going to be paying that home off between $400 and $500 a month. That's $5,200 a year at a $450 average pay down per month. Over 5 years, that's $26,000. So it's $26,000 in equity you've gained just by making your payment. In addition to that, the average American gets around $2,200 back per year on their taxes for paying interest, what's called mortgage interest premiums or write-offs or whatever you call it, right? So that's another $10,000. That's 35 grand right there. Yeah. 35 grand for doing what you normally do, and that's just live somewhere, right? And that's without appreciation. And then I hear people that say, well, Mike, I want to save up a 20% down payment to avoid PMI, or I want to save up a 40% down payment, or I want to save up and buy a home cash. Well, the question I have for you is, okay, how much money could somebody put away? Because you have to live somewhere, so you're writing a check to somebody else. That's money you cannot use, so that goes away. How much money with inflation the way it is, and I know the savings rate is down at 2.3% right now for Americans. How much money, if you cut everything out of your budget, could you potentially save per month? Yeah. $500? $1,000? I mean, how many people on this call can honestly say that they can save $2,000 per month, $24,000 a year after taxes and money? Mind you, so that money actually costs $36,000. How many people can say that right now? Like freaking nobody.
Nobody.
Right? But check this out. If you're buying that home at $350, how many months is it going to take to save up a cash offer? 175 months. That's almost 15 years.
Yeah.
But what happened to home values over the last 15 years? Okay, let's take out 2020. Let's take out 2019. Let's take out 2021. Let's take out 2022, the first half of it. Let's just say up to 2018. Going 15 years from 2003 to 2018, did home values go up or down? They went up.
Up.
They went down a little bit during 08, 09, 010, but then they shot right back up. And by 2014, we had recovered value. By 2015, we were actually going positive again. So that 350 house that you're saving for, by the time you get there 15 years down the road, it's actually 450.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got to save another 5 years. But then we have what's called opium. Other people's money. Go use that stuff.
Go use that. Right.
Yeah. So let's say you put 10% down on a 350. Your monthly payment is going to be what? With taxes and insurance and everything. $1,900 a month? $1,800 a month?
Give me the loan amounts.
Let's say 350, you're putting 10% down. So that's
315.
Yeah, 315 at 6.5% interest rate.
Yeah. So you're you're $1,990 a month.
Yeah, $1,990 a month. So that's the same $2,000.
So you're probably PMI wise, you're probably another, if you're only putting 5% down or 10% down, you're probably $100 a month.
Yeah. With taxes and insurance, all in, let's call it $2,500 a month.
Yeah. Maybe a little higher, but yeah, that's the idea. Yep.
And the reality is, you're paying at least $1,500 a month wherever you're at in this day and age for renting anything.
Unless you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, you know.
Yeah.
And even then, I've got one of my good friends lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in Royal Oak, and it's not particularly great. And I think even his rent's $1,000 a month. It's like,
yeah,
if you've got a family and you're renting a home, there's no argument to be made to not own a home. I actually think it's really dangerous. One of the things that Grant Cardone, and by the way, I respect Grant Cardone, but one of the things he talks about is home ownership. You should never own a home. You should always rent. But what he's not telling you is, yes, he rents, but he owns the building
with a different company.
He owns the building with a different company and then rents his building to that company. He's just talking about a tax shuffle.
That's it.
He's a homeowner, you guys. There is no argument to stop. So if you're on TikTok and you're seeing this nonsense, this bullshit about homeownership, the number one predictor of wealth in America is owning a home. So stop. There's no argument. We won't even entertain the argument. There is no argument. Okay.
That's it. And of that, let's call it $2,400 or $2,500 a month. We've already verified the $600 a month is coming back to you between what you're paying down and what you're getting back on your taxes. So you're right back down at $2,000 or $1,900 again. Yeah. So the reality is you're paying $1,500 to $2,000 for rent anyway. You may as well go look at a home. And that was a $350 home. You don't have to buy a $350 home. You could buy a $275 home and get that payment back down to $1,600 or $1,700 if you want to. Yeah. But more of the story is, guys, in this market, I am actively purchasing property. Yeah. Just closed on one.
Yeah, I'm under contract with 2. Yeah.
In this market, I'm actually buying property because at the end of the day, as an investor side, the only thing I look at is my return on investment, my cash back in my pocket. If it cost me $50,000 to get into this home, how many months will it take for me to get that $50,000 back so I can redeploy it? And if I'm coming up with good deals where I'm like, hey, I'm going to go buy this home because I can redeploy this cash in 48 months. I can redeploy this cash in 60 months. I can redeploy this cash in 24 months. Again, while paying down a loan, while creating wealth, while taking in revenue, while going positive ROI, because you can't recapture cash without a positive ROI, right? If I'm seeing this, then every family on this Zoom needs to be taking a hard look at, do I own a home or am I paying somebody else's mortgage? And I know everybody's heard that before, but guys, this is real life stuff. Yeah. Like I just picked up a property. Somebody else is going to be paying that loan off for me. So I went ahead and borrowed borrowed money from somebody else to do it, the bank, right? 15 years from now, I'm going to have an asset that's minimally half paid off because I make extra payments on it because I'm that guy. I shouldn't be that guy because I have a really good interest rate, but I'm that guy, right? Where I do make the extra payments.
Are you really doing that?
Yeah, it's hard for me not to. It's ingrained to me that when I was growing up to make extra payments and pay things off. I know.
I hate carrying debt too. I really do. I
I
don't.
do. I hate carrying debt. I feel it's like it's always a liability. And like when it comes to rental properties, I really want them to be around 50% or better equity position.
Yeah.
Because if something catastrophic happens and then rents do go backwards 30% or 40%, if I'm 50% equity, I don't even need to sell it at that point. My payment's so low, I can take that 30% hit in rent and be just fine. I saw a lot of investors go like razor wire back in 07, 08, 09 and just get punked. There was a guy in Detroit that I was talking to where in 07, 08, he was in an investor group that I was going to every once in a while, and he was up to 190 properties in Detroit, and he had done it in like 3 years. I'm like, how in the heck did you do 190 properties in 3 years? Well, and I figured it out. So a flipper would come in, flip the property, sell it to an everyday person,
Yeah.
right? Sell it for 110, put a loan on it for 110% of value. So when you
Yeah.
bought the property, you actually walked out of that property with a check for 8 grand or 12 grand or 15 grand or whatever the 10% was. So you
Huh.
could just go in and literally use that 10%. And back then, the loans for investors went all the way down to 10%. So you do take that 10% you pulled out of this property, you put it as a 10% down on the next property, and they would give you 110%.
Huh.
Yeah. So the loan was actually 120%, but you put 10% down, bringing it down. And this
Yeah.
guy over 3 years had done 190 of them.
Holy
And
cow.
they were in Detroit, making it worse. So those properties went from a $90,000 or $120,000 value to like a $4,000 value. In some cases, a $4 value, like overnight, like
I
in
would
18
I
months.
would think some of those people did very well, actually, even with that arrangement. Like,
Oh, for sure. Some of those people did very well. This
yeah.
guy went ahead and just let all 190 properties go back to the bank. That was his answer.
Holy
He had
shit.
made so few payments on it that the principal payment, the principal amounts were nowhere near even just down to 100% of value.
Holy shit.
So we're talking 3 years. That's all it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're not paying off 10% in 3 years. But anyway. So moral of the story is, for myself, I want to have my properties paid down to around a 50% level because that's just my own personal comfort
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah.
Because if everything goes sideways and the apocalypse actually happens, I can still rent out that property and go positive ROI.
Yeah.
At least positive enough, because eventually I'm gonna have to do a roof, I'm gonna have to do windows, I'm gonna have to do a furnace, I'm gonna have to do AC, all those wonderful things that come up with homeownership anyway. So moral of the story, guys, if you do not
God,
own a home,
you know
you've
what we
got to
should
buy a
do?
home. If
Yeah.
you have cash sitting there and you're afraid of jumping into the stock market, and frankly, I am just putting it out there. I don't know what's going to happen. I do invest consistently, but I'm only investing a specific percentage of my income. I'm taking the rest of it and buying additional property because I know people got to live somewhere, and I know that there are not enough rental units in Metro Detroit to as far as supply and demand goes. And I know that because rents are up year over year 30%.
Yeah.
So guys, if you have a home, it would be definitely worth looking at an investment property at this time specifically. And what's even better is when 24 months from now, when the interest rates come down, that 6.5% I've got on one of my rentals right now, I'm going to refi back down at 4.25,
All good.
but the rents aren't coming down.
Dude, last year or last couple of years, I didn't care what I paid for a rental property because I was buying.
Didn't
I
matter.
rental properties at 3.5%.
Yeah. With the interest rates, it didn't matter.
It's like, oh my God, I'm great. I'm gravy.
Yeah. Now we got to look a little harder for the deals. Now we got to make sure
Mhm.
that we're lining everything up properly. It's not
Mhm.
like before. And to your point, Austin, like in 2019, 2020, 2021, it did not matter what house you bought.
Mhm.
All that matters is that you bought as many as you could, as fast as you could.
As fast as you go.
Now it's a little bit, and shame on me for not taking a bigger advantage of it because I didn't. But now we're seeing this little bit of a slowdown. So now we just got to be a little more careful as to what we're buying and where we're buying.
Yeah.
So,
God, we really should do. The next time we all meet, we really should talk about the investing side and the tax benefits. Like we're really, really fortunate to be around some really high level people that are very smart, and they've taught us some things around the tax benefit of things that are just mind boggling. And I think it'd be a shame for us not to share it with you guys. To be honest with you, we really should do that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll talk about some tax segregations. We'll talk about some solar write-offs. We'll talk about all that stuff next time. And this is stuff
If you're interested, by the way, in investing in real estate and you
Yeah.
don't know the word cost segregation, you need to call me. You have to call us. You have to call and have a conversation with us. It's the craziest game-changing thing ever. And it's insane. And even if you don't know what I'm talking about and you have even a smidge of interest in lowering your taxes,
I'll buy a
and
lot.
by a shit ton. I don't know. That's like I don't know what kind of metric shit ton is, but by a shit ton, then you should be talking to us.
For sure. All right, man. On that note, I'm going to go to the gym.
Right? A shit ton.
Yeah. 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 All right. Healthy body, healthy mind. I'm going to the gym.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we summarize real quick?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. Ready? You're seeing a lot of stuff on the news, and it's saying a lot of things about we're going to see a downturn in the real estate market, and what's going to happen, and are we about to implode? The answer is no. The answer is no. We might see a correction. We might see a 5 or 10%, and it doesn't matter. The market that you buy in is the market that you sell in. Okay. The other thing, if I were selling a home right now and I were holding out for every penny, every $5,000, get over yourself. Sell the home so that you can accomplish what you need to on the next home, because you're going to get a better deal on the next home. The next thing is that the banks have really come up with some really, really cool solutions that are not risky, where you can get the seller to pay down your interest rate and get into a home. And we just got to weather the next couple of years. Careful, because we may see interest rates start with an 8% in the next, you're saying 90 days, call it 90 days, 120 days, 6 months. And so, and then lastly, if you're renting in any argument that's about to come out of your mouth, stop. The time is now. I promise you. And so, I don't know. And I'd say probably the last point that we covered is like, hey, we're going to be okay. Mike's parents bought a house at 12 or 16%, and your payment now is less money than they paid on their home for $200,000 less in value. We're going to be okay.
We're going to be fine.
Lastly, if you're staring down a giant kitchen renovation or whatever renovation in your home, and you're trying to weigh, should I move or should I do the renovation? You're not going to get your money back. So if you don't plan on being in that home for 5 or 10 years, and you're not comfortable with the lifestyle play of probably $600 a month for that new kitchen, and you don't want to live in a construction zone, you may want to just move.
Yep.
Right. And then I'd say probably the last thing is, if you're considering going into debt for pretty much anything, like either home equity debt or credit card debt or whatever, stop, please. Please try not to, because interest rates are going up, and you don't want to be living that cycle of the refinance. What that summarizes everything?
That summarizes everything. And I think that's important enough to say twice, guys. I think we all, myself included, need to re-examine every single penny that goes out of our house every month, and really try to work to cut that back down by 10%, 15%. And I think that's surprisingly enough, I think we can find it. And I think we can figure a way. Like, I still eat out twice a week. Do I really need to eat out twice a week, or can it be once a week?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, have you seen the prices on the menus nowadays with inflation?
Dude, I don't eat out, so I don't know.
I mean, dude, well, I'm going to tell you right now, 2 people, I don't care who you are, 2 people, you're not getting out for under $100.
Oh, no way.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, actually, I was just watching that fast food. There was another economic study that came out that shows that the average per person meal fast food is now $13.
Dude, a Happy Meal is like $6. I bought my kids a Happy Meal the other day. Like, what the?
But you can make a meal that's similar at home for $7.
Yeah.
It's a 40% savings. I mean, sure, you got to do a little work to do it, but with a little meal prep and a little planning, maybe you plan out 5 meals you make at a time, whatever that looks like, you can do it. Do we all really need to go buy a $6 Starbucks? Nope. Yeah. Or a $5, Dunkin' Donuts. That's not really a big savings.
Yeah.
I have a coffee.
The Austin play. I go to Costco, get some badass meat, cook up steak, chicken, have a bag of it at all times in my fridge. Frozen peas, frozen green beans, potatoes, whatever. You can just eat anytime. I'm going to go eat right now.
I'm not saying that don't go live your life, guys. I'm not. But I am saying, like, let's definitely pick and choose what we're going to live our life towards and for, right? Starbucks and eating out once a week is a fleeting moment that no one cares about. But take those 2 things, throw them into a bank account. 2 years down the road, you've got a badass European trip.
Yeah.
That's literally what you're trading. So people, and I'm guilty of this just like anybody else. For a while there, I was choosing Starbucks over going on amazing vacations, because that's the actual trade.
No, just make your coffee at home.
That's it. All right, guys.
Good job by you today, man.
Good job by you. And we are out of here.
Reach out to us for anything, anytime. Seriously. We'll